Ever since I was a small girl, I remember my grandmother drinking afternoon tea. Every day she would sit at her table dressed in one of her many expensive gowns and sip on a cup of hot tea. She had never offered me any until my mother died. I arrived at grandmother's estate 3 days after my mother's funeral. It had been 20 years since I had seen her last, but her home was still as extraordinary as ever. Nestled on 50 acres of classic English countryside was her enormous British manor. Located deep in Suffolk County, amidst rolling green hills, is a grand iron gate, whose bars hide the place where childhood dreams are made. Behind its guard runs a long cobblestone driveway that gently meanders through the perfect-shaped maple trees. It is nearly 3 miles before you reach the clearing where the manor lay, rising above intricately designed flower gardens that cascade downward to the driveway. At the base of these colorful gardens, guarding the entrance, is a hand-carved marble water fountain. Inside the crystal blue water is a 20-foot statue of Aphrodite, standing nude with long flowing hair draped over her breasts, standing in a seductive pose, her stone eyes glaring out at all who approach. On the east side of the property are the stable grounds. I would spend countless hours there learning to ride the most beautiful horses money could buy. I stepped from the black Rolls Royce which had shuttled me from the gate and stood taking in the exquisite home. It was 3 stories of classic British architecture, modeled from Kensington Palace. It rose from the ground like a historic stone wonder. For 2 weeks every summer it became my personal playground, and my God did I love it here. I walked up the granite stairs, pictures of my mother's funeral under my arm, to the massive oak door. I rang the bell and took a deep breath. Repressing my anger deep inside, Mr. Jeffrey, my grandmother's head servant, greeted me at the door. "Hello, ma'am, it's a pleasure to see you again," Jeffrey said, bowing his head as I stepped inside. "Hello, Jeffrey, it's been a very long time." "Far too long, I must say. I have missed you dearly. You are a woman grown." "My grandmother sent for me. I was told it was urgent," I replied coldly. I was in no mood for idle chatter. "You will find her in the tea room. Does my lady need to be refreshed of its location?" "I know where it is," I said and turned away. "Miss, where are your bags? I've made up your old room, just the way you like it." "I will not be staying long, Jeffrey," I snapped back and walked from the foyer. "I am sorry to hear that. I hope you reconsider." I entered the grand hallway where hundreds of exquisite pieces of artwork adorn the walls. My grandmother obsessively collected them over her lifetime. Many were hundreds of years old, and she often bragged how some were painted by the Renaissance masters. It was mind-boggling how much money this old woman had. I never thought much about it as a child, but now it seemed obscene that one person should have this kind of wealth. My heels clicked rapidly inside the grand corridor, reverberating off the 20-foot ceilings. With each step I became even angrier. Oil paintings, sculptures, and stained glass littered the walls, each piece worth thousands of dollars. The place reeked of opulence. How could a person so filthy rich leave her children completely defenseless? Just one of these paintings could have provided my mother the care she so desperately needed. I stormed through the French doors and found my grandmother sitting in her tea table, sipping from the same weathered tea cup she had always used. Compared to the rest of her things, it was odd that she used such a simple cup. "Hello, Teresa," she said quietly, looking my way with her piercing gray eyes. They were as brilliant as ever. "Hello, Grandma," I chided. "Please sit with me, child." I sat down at the perfectly set table, fuming on the inside. It lay inside a magnificent room, whose architecture utilized many intricate arches and columns. Lavish artwork filled the space of the walls, and marble statues of nude men and women looked on with steady eyes. The ceiling rose 30 feet to a golden dome, highlighted with an incredible Byzantine-style mosaic. It was more a museum than a place for tea. Grandma's chair faced a wall of windows which peered out into the vast gardens behind the estate. Gardens which required its own full-time staff to maintain. The polarity of our lives could not be more striking. "How is Cassandra?" she asked. "Please do not feign interest in my daughter's well-being," I said, the words bursting forth. I did not fly halfway across the globe to indulge in small talk. Go ahead, child. I imagine you have many strong words for me. How dare you, you cold and heartless bitch, I said, staring at her, unmoving. There was a hint of guilt deep behind her gray irids, but nothing more. You wonder how I could miss the funeral of my only daughter. I bet it quite unimaginable from your perspective. Do you know that she called out for you under her dying breath? She wept like a small child begging for her mother as she passed. You were not there like always. Instead, you sat hiding her here inside your castle. Mothers are not supposed to outlive their daughters. Being a mother, I assumed you understand that, she replied. Nothing, I said, had gotten through. I wanted to reach out and grab her turkey neck and squeeze. That does not make it right. You left her cold, alone, and penniless as she slowly deteriorated. Look at this place. All this money and you couldn't spare a nickel for your dying daughter? I said, seething with anger now. I understand. You are not wrong, child. And why couldn't we visit more often? Once a year you would bring us here? To this fantasy land, a place you used to your advantage? You knew its power, the seductive force it had on me as a child. You must have thought it may make Mom and I forget how little you were there. Well, it didn't work. My mother knew, and as I grew older, I came to understand it too. I am so sorry, but it had to be that way. It is hard to understand now, but that's why I brought you here. It's time you learn the truth. I don't want to hear the pathetic excuses of a bitter old woman. Talking to you is meaningless. I had hoped that maybe you would exhibit a sliver of regret, but there's nothing here but an old woman and her things. No matter how many pretty horses and fancy things you gave us, in the end, you didn't buy our love. We knew it was all fake, just like the woman who gave it. I said, getting up from the chair. It was time to leave. Teresa, wait, you can't leave. Teresa, wait, you can leave, believing what you may about me, but please, let an old woman speak, if only this last time. Spit it out then, I said. Look at you, dear, the last shreds of youth has left you. It's plain for all to see. What did you say? I said, facing her, astounded by her words. The gall of this woman was incredulous. You used to be so beautiful, flowing long black hair which shone brightly even under the darkest of night. A physique so flawless that you had your first modeling contract by the 7th grade. You were a beacon of youth and beauty to all of those around you. But that has all vanished, gripped by Father Time's heartless grasp. You can continue to dye your hair, but the gray will always return, peeking up from your roots for everyone to see. And that skin, which you so foolishly aged from all the heavy partying in your 20s, that will only get worse. But the worst of all was your daughter. What her birth did to your body is impossible to hide. You're a poor, single woman, closing on 50, with a teenage daughter. Do you think any man will look upon you, as so many did long ago? How dare you, I screamed, lone tear relieving my eye. I hated to admit it, but she was right. Once I was the most beautiful woman in any room I entered. But age is not kind to pretty women. It comes like a monster eating away your identity, turning it into a shell of who you used to be. Then it mercilessly rips away the man you loved and points him in the direction of a newer, better model. I am sorry, but it's true. Time always wins. It will only get worse until you are old and alone. This must be a horrible perspective for you, Teresa. You did always prefer the attention of extraordinary men. Average never quite cut it with you. Please stop. Why are you doing this? I came here hoping you would show some remorse, but instead I come and you insult me. You are truly pathetic. I hope when your time comes you remember how you left your daughter to die alone. Goodbye. I hope you rot in hell alone and afraid. And by the look of you, death cannot be far off, I said, walking from the room. If you leave, I cannot help you. Fuck you, Grandma. You can't help me. You have never helped anyone but yourself. You can have it all back, the perfect hair, the beautiful face, your angelic skin, and best of all, the elite male attention I know you desire. It can all be yours again, she said, smiling. This woman had truly lost it. Are you mad? You said it yourself. I'm almost 50. There's nothing I can do. You are mistaken, Teresa. I can give it all back. Just sit down and let me speak. 5 minutes is all I ask. I don't need your money. I refuse to become some hacked-up plastic monster. I am not suggesting plastic surgery. What I offer is a miracle. I cannot believe I'm doing this. You have 5 minutes, I said, and reluctantly sat down. How old do you think I am? She asked. It was an interesting question, and one I had pondered before. My grandma's age was always a mystery. She had always looked like an old woman, but she had rarely moved like one. Her mind was always sharp, and I had never heard about her getting sick. It was strange to think about. 80, I said, factoring in my mother's age. Not a bad guess, but a little low. I turned 101 last week. That is impossible, I said, chuckling at the preposterousness of her claim. Oh, it is far from impossible. I was born April 2nd, 1915. I can show you my birth certificate if you'd like. I studied her face and decided that she must be lying. A centenarian could never look this good. Strangely, even though I had not seen her in 20 years, she did not look much different. Her hair was a little whiter and her skin a bit more wrinkled, but her eyes were the same, strong and full of life. Let me ask you this, Teresa. When was the last time you remember seeing my hands? This was another interesting question, and I had to think hard about. I thought back to my summers here as a child, and I realized I had never seen her without her lavender gloves. Oddly, I don't think I have ever seen them. You have always worn gloves. You are correct. Now please stay seated. I do not want you to be alarmed, my grandmother said. Standing up from the table in a smooth motion, there was no struggle in her movement. A woman of her age should not have moved that gracefully. My grandma took one of her lavender gloves and slowly pulled it off. Underneath the satin fabric was a small, delicate hand, whose skin was pure as milk. There was not a single wrinkle or any visible veins. It was the hand of a young woman. But how? I said, astounded. Wait, it gets much more interesting, she responded with a smile. My grandmother raised her hands to her snow-white hair and tugged. As the wig came off, a cascade of long golden hair fell to her shoulders. It was healthy and beautiful. Who are you? I said nervously. I was beginning to get scared. Someone was impersonating my grandmother. It is me, child. Listen to my voice, she said softly. She was right. It was her unmistakable voice. Now this will be the worst part. I need you to stay calm, she said, reaching up to her forehead. Her manicured nail dug into her skin and ripped the highly detailed latex mask from her face. My jaw dropped. Underneath the disguise was a portrait of a young, beautiful woman, no older than 20. Everything had changed except the eyes. They were just as when I was a child. What the hell? I said, stumbling out of my chair, my heart pounding from my chest. I know how shocking this must be, but do not be scared. It is me, your grandmother. But how? I said, listening closely to her distinctive voice. We are descendants of a very rare ancestry, down our matriarchal line. You and I are very special people, and now that your mother has passed, it is time you learn who you really are. I promise to explain everything over a cup of tea, something I have been eagerly awaiting for a very long time. But we are forbidden to ever drink your tea, I said. That was true until today. I reluctantly sat back at the table and stared at this woman who claimed to be my grandma. My hands were shaking and I was struggling to breathe as I processed this strange turn of events. She walked over to her china cabinet and pulled a small teacup and saucer from inside. It was off-white porcelain with hand-painted floral patterns, identical to one she had always used. She carefully placed it on the table. This is yours, Teresa. It's very old. Do not let anything happen to it. Breaking it would be the ultimate tragedy. She grabbed the teapot from the table as a faint trace of steam rose from the spout and poured a small cup of tea for both of us. It was light brown in color. When finished, she peered at me, her eyes encouraging me to drink. I put the cup to my lips and sipped. Ugh, I said as I gagged on the foul-tasting drink. What is this, poison? Quite the opposite, she said, chuckling. The taste will get better in time. Eventually, you will come to enjoy its flavor. I can't drink this. It tastes like it was pulled from a septic tank. Just give it a moment, she said, taking a long sip of her cup. What do you mean? Do you feel any different? If you were talking about a horrible taste in my mouth, then yes. Oh, yes, forgive me. I forgot. It may take a bit longer to act than my own. Go on and take another sip. I assure you it is safe. I will not. This stuff is vile. You will change your mind here shortly, she said calmly. I leaned back in my chair as the wave euphoria trickled through my body. It was like a switch had been flipped when I arrived here. I had been angry, jet-lagged, and utterly exhausted. I had slept little more than a few hours since my mother's passing, but now a surge of euphoric energy was pulsating inside of me, like a hit of pure cocaine, but different. It didn't feel like a drug. What the hell is going on? I said, the effect intensifying with every breath. Finish the drink. What you are experiencing now is only the beginning. Without hesitation, I emptied the contents down my throat. The taste was worse the second time, but it didn't matter. I wanted more as the next wave of tea hit my stomach. I felt an even stronger explosion of energy permeate my entire body. It was incredible, like the world's greatest drug was pumping through my veins. But instead of high, I felt alert, clear-headed, and best of all, alive. What did you give me? I said. Welcome to afternoon tea, my dear. Now please come with me. My grandmother took my hand, her skin as soft as a child, and led me away from the tea room. I was floating high in ecstasy as we moved along her marble-laid corridor. Everything was perfect until something bad happened. "Something's wrong with my eyes. I can't see," I exclaimed as my vision suddenly became extremely blurry. I could only see fuzzy patches of color. My grandmother reached out and pulled off my glasses. It was like I had a blindfold removed. The world around me came into sharp focus with an incredible clarity I had never experienced before. Ever since my early 20s, I had worn glasses or contacts, and my vision had continually gotten worse from that point on. "How is your vision, Teresa?" Grandma said, with a gleeful pitch in her voice. "This is incredible," I said, astounded that I could see everything in perfect detail. "What happened to my eyes?" "They're healing." "Healing? But how?" "That is only the beginning." We traveled deeper into the manor towards Grandma's ground floor bedroom suite. Adjacent to her bedroom was the closet, a closet which was bigger than my entire apartment. It was loaded with racks and racks of expensive clothing and shoes. We went inside and she guided me in front of her mirrors. "The change will be subtle at first, but take a hard look at yourself and tell me what you see." I stared deeply into the wall mirror, my naked eyes inspecting with newfound precision. There was something different, but I could not pinpoint it. "What am I looking for?" I said. "Look closely at your face." I moved closer to the mirror and studied my face. It was my wrinkles. While still visible, they were lessened considerably. I looked like I had good night's sleep and professional makeup applied. The bags under my eyes were gone, the sun marks had lightened, and my hair looked vibrant and alive. The gray roots had faded away. "Holy shit, I look 5 years younger." "Precisely," she said with a grin. "How is this possible?" "This is your inheritance, Teresa." "My inheritance?" "You have been given a very special gift, a gift that has been passed down in our family since the early 18th century. It is extraordinarily powerful. What you are experiencing now is just a sample of its full potential, which is beyond your wildest imagination. But to realize this power, I must first give you a choice. Either you can forget any of this ever happened and return home, or you can stay with your old grandmother and join me tomorrow for afternoon tea. The choice is yours. I've had your room prepared by Jeffrey. I assume you still remember where it is." "Of course, how could I forget?" "Stay for the night, explore the stables as you did as a child, and come to a decision. Return to your life as you knew it, or travel down a rabbit hole. I do hope you choose the latter, and then maybe you will come to understand the decision I have made in my life." And with that, she left to where I do not know. But one thing was certain, I did not need time to reflect on the decision. She had me at the first sip. I was heading down the rabbit hole.